All right. Welcome to another episode of Tea Time at PhysioX. We have a special guest today, Dr. Justin Ternes. My roommate from graduate school. We're the only people in our class that started our own business.
Yes.
So I went into orthopedics, fixing people's chronic injuries through biomechanics and the nervous system. And Justin went into breath work,
Yes.
which is very interesting. And I remember you said you got fired from your first job, actually, and that was really how things started to spiral through.
Yeah.
So,
Very positive, a very positive experience.
all right, well, talk me through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I went from physical therapy school into work in a private practice, similar to PhysioX. Great layout, one-on-one, really cool opportunity as a new grad to teach physical therapy and work with clients. And so everything was great except for the dynamic with my boss, who felt like he was restrictive and a little bit more like micromanagey, and the way that I see the physical body and the human system and how it heals didn't align with him fully. So the firing was probably one of the best things to happen to me as a new grad, because it gave me freedom and permission to pursue the way that I see healing, and a lot of that comes down to breathing and breath work. And so he didn't really understand the thing that I was supporting people with, which was more than just physical healing. It was mental, emotional, stress regulation, and breath work is one of the best ways to utilize that. And so yeah, I got fired, but it all worked out.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys have a different philosophy to how you should be treating the person in front of you. Mm-hmm. So of course, it sounds like they may be operating more of a traditional lens of physical therapy. Let's just fix maybe the symptoms and just have a move. Mm-hmm. But you are really more holistic and seeing from a broader perspective. So tell me a little bit more about that, like the philosophy around that, and
Absolutely.
What power does breath has to do with healing the body?
Absolutely. So for me, the way that I see it is that through working as a physical therapist, I noticed that working with patients, typically a lot of the issues weren't just the physical issues. The issues were the stress from traffic, the stress from things going on in their life, and I could see it. They looked wound up. And so what I brought in was just a very common, gentle reminder to relax, breathe, let the traffic go, so we can be fully here, because you can't do effective physical therapy if you're not fully present in the session. And so I got interested about how people would show up physically but not be in the room mentally, and that made me reflect on how to pull people back into their bodies and into their present moment to get the most out of their PT. Mm-hmm. So at the same time as seeing that, I was practicing in my own life breath work and meditation, and finding a ton of benefit in my mind and body, and relaxing. And I'm an extroverted person, I'm energetic, and yet at the same time, often I was overly extroverted to cover up any like anxiety or stress I was holding.
Oh, wow.
So I had like this like defense mechanism, and that was actually distancing me from myself. And through learning breath techniques, meditation, jumping into ice baths on a very regular daily basis, when I first discovered it, daily for like years, ice bath, I discovered that I was doing things that weren't in alignment with myself. So I started tapping into this connection to my truth in myself, which is now why my business is called True Self Health. Because once I found that connection, everything else started working better, including my physical health. And so at that point, I was like, oh, that's how I want to help people. I want to help people dial into who they are in their heart and their soul. And that from there will create an amazing ecosystem for growth and health, to expand. And so all of a sudden, I went from traditional mindset thinking in physical therapy to non-traditional biopsychosocial, even though I don't fully align with everything biopsychosocial, but a little bit more expansive lens, holistic approach.
That's interesting that you're saying that, because I thought you were probably the least anxious person that I know, because you're always talking to people. You have no kind of restriction on communications, and me, I like to be a little more in the back seat.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a pure introvert or extrovert. I think I've realized I'm somewhere down the middle, but you're
Yeah.
definitely more of an extrovert. So it's very interesting that breathwork have helped you discover that it was like a coping mechanism almost.
Exactly, and it's funny that you were my roommate throughout all of physical therapy school and didn't know it.
I had no idea,
and we're
man.
really good at masking our things and covering up our things, and I think in recognizing that I was really good at like fooling people in that way, as soon as I like cleaned that up, all of a sudden I felt free. I think what happened was as soon as I was able to detect that in myself, because I didn't even know I was doing that, right, until I cleaned it up, and then I was like, oh, that's what I was doing. And now I feel like I was given this gift to be able to see that in other people. And I'm like, oh, everything's great, but what else is going on? Everything's great. Yeah, everything's great, but like, what else is going on? Like, because we're all, I think there's the us, there's the true self, and then there's the how we're showing up in the world. And there's a constant pursuit to come into alignment with that. I'm not in a perfect alignment. I'm still working, and that's the lifelong journey, is being constantly swayed by things in life and stress, and just trying to maintain that centering and that presence. And so it's a lifelong practice for me, and for others, the gap might be bigger, and I can help individuals explore that gap. And the closer you get to that line of truth, I feel like the better your body will respond, the more your mind will open, and the more benefit you'll get in your everyday life. It's very like Jungian psychology, but it works.
I remember I visited you in California. So Justin, you were in California for like 7 years, and then you moved back to Arkansas. So early on in that 7 years in California, I visited you, and I remember you said, yo, you want to go breathe in someone's living room and hop on an ice bath. I was like, yo, what are you talking about? But I was like, yeah, I'm down. And I went there, and I remember it was just maybe like 20 of us in a room, closing our eyes. Someone had I think he had like a triangle where he's beating the triangle, some chimes, and we're just going, I think for like at least 30,
45 minutes.
Yeah. And after that, I just felt almost like high, but in a clean sense of way. I don't know how to describe it, because I think if you have experimented with marijuana and stuff, you get high, but there's a little bit of that angst hidden underneath there, and it just feels a much cleaner, clearer mind. I think things look more clear to me, which sounds crazy. And my hands were kind of tingling, and we just smiling.
Yeah.
And then I went into the ice bath, and I remember being there for 3 minutes, but I felt like I could have gone longer.
Of course.
But out of respect for other people waiting in line, I had to get out.
Yeah.
But that single-handedly have been one of my favorite experiences that I always remember. And I want to thank you for showing me that, because I have been looking for more of these out here. But since that's a long time ago, so tell me, what are you doing now?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Rooms of 20 people. That was a great group in San Diego. And I currently live in Arkansas now, my hometown. So I made
Ozarks.
the full Ozarks. I'm in the Ozarks.
Yeah,
I'm in the Ozarks. Like different than Arkansas. I'm in the Ozarks. But my journey's kind of come full circle, and there's a lot of that breath work, woo-woo stuff in San Diego, California, and now I'm bringing it back. I think from a more like scientific approach, a more grounded approach.
Right, you got to bridge the woo-woo with the science.
Yeah, so there's the mind and then the body. So the mind is the psyche, the body is the soma, and the breath is the pneuma. It's the bridge between the both. And they also say that breath is the bridge between science and spirituality. There's this line, and so a lot of people are off put by the idea of like breathwork meditation and buzzing, but it's like, no, actually what you're doing is you're hyper-oxygenating your system. You're using the fullness of your lung capacity. Most people are breathing at like 50% full lung capacity. They're not expanding and opening and stretching and using their breath fully.
I tell people all the time, breathing, we do it, but there's a physical thing that happens. The rib cage are moving, the muscles around the rib cage are moving, attaches to your low back. There's diaphragm, that's a muscle. Your lung is a muscle, your heart's a muscle. And these things need to be trained. And I almost feel like the mental and the psychological effect that comes from it is just a really nice bonus.
It's a great bonus.
Excellent bonus. But if not for that, at least do it for the physical things that you can get.
Yeah, and I think 90% of breathwork instructors come from the yoga background where they're breathing to find peace and mindfulness meditation, which is great. But I feel like I have a cool opportunity being a physical therapist, being able to look at the physical components of breath and really dialing into the mechanics. And although I'm very breathwork focused and you're very biomechanical focused, we're doing the same thing. I'm just focusing on the core, the lungs, the rib cage.
Right.
But really it's all about rib mobility, muscle strengthening, endurance, lung capacity, and then on a deeper level, whenever you change the way you breathe, you change the way you oxygenate your cells and your system, and then also not just changing the way they breathe, but also improve the way that you can hold your breath and restrict breath, but also maintain circulation as you're holding your breath, because your heart's still beating even if you hold your breath for 1 minute, 2 minutes. On a deep physical or on a cellular level, you're training aerobic efficiency and oxygen and mitochondrial efficiency. And so there's so many cool overlaps, and I think it's like very much the same, just coming from a slightly different philosophy.
Absolutely. I think that's what I like about it, because it doesn't interrupt my current framework of how I look at the body. It fits right in there. It's very scientific, it works, and then there is the whole, spiritual side of it, which I love. This is my opinion, but I do think everyone needs some spirituality, or else the world just seems a little bit brighter if you have a piece of that.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't have that piece of spirituality, and then they do a breathwork session and they're like, oh, I was buzzing. I felt like I was connecting to the trees a little bit more. And it's like, okay, what is that? I mean, you can label it spirituality, or just label it enhanced mindset and connection with nature.
You don't even have to label it.
One and the same, right?
You don't have to label it.
So you don't have to label it, but what it does is breath is in Greek, breath. The term for breath is pneuma. The term for spirit is pneuma. So they were seen as one and the same by the ancient Greeks. Same thing in Latin. Spiritus was breath. Spiritus was spirit. One and the same. So in human history, we saw breath and life and spirituality as one and the same, because breath is how we enter the world, and breath is how we exit the world. It's as involved in the psycho-spiritual component of life as anything. And so
there's layers to that. I love it.
There's so many layers to that.
Yeah. Sweet. So tell me a little bit more about the ice that comes after, because I thought the ice after the breath work was truly remarkable. And I've done it without the breath work, and it's good, but it really wasn't the same. It's like, what's going on over there? Why does the two combination work so well?
So you can do all the breath work in the world without any ice bath, and you're great, and you're going to get benefits from breath. A lot of times I'll do an ice bath and not really focus on my breath at all, and I'm engaging in the benefits of ice bath. So independently they're beneficial, but together that's a unique combination where when you're breathing prior to jumping in the ice bath, you're activating your nervous system because you're breathing fast. You're turning on the sympathetic nervous system, and then we'll do holds, and you'll exhale and hold your breath for a couple of moments, and then integrate breathing nice and slow. And so you're taking the toggle switch of your nervous system, turning it on, sympathetic, turning it off, relaxing, parasympathetic. When you get into the ice bath, that's an involuntary stimulus. You're going to freeze, you're going to freak out, your body's going to be like, I don't know what to do. But you do know what to do, because what you just did right before getting into the ice bath was turn the toggle switch. So as people are getting into the ice bath, I'll remind them, hey, remember, like 20 minutes ago, you were able to calm yourself down. You're able to go from a buzzing body to a relaxing body. Let's do the same thing here. So the stimulation of the ice will activate you, and you already now have the tools of slowing your breath, taking bigger than normal breaths, oxygenating, relaxing the body, and then sinking more into the experience. And so what you're doing is you're using that tool of breath in action. It's like an amazing translation of the practice into life.
Oh, I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense now that you explain it. You're taking the mechanism of the breath and applying it when you're on the ice, which is almost like a resistance against what you need to be doing to regulate yourself.
Yeah, and that's more behavioral, psychological, right? Also beneficial in combining the two is when you breathe deep and heavy, like a Wim Hof method or another hyperventilation type technique, you're activating the ribs, activating the diaphragm, getting a lot of blood flow circulation into your core, which is the center point of heat production in the body. So then you're now a little bit more internally heated, and you go into an ice bath and you're frozen,
okay.
but you've already oxygenated your body, you've already produced a lot of heat from breath because you do a bunch of bicep curls, you're going to produce some heat in that muscle. So you do a bunch of breath work practices, you're going to produce a lot of heat in your core. So you get into an ice bath, and on a physical level, you're a little bit more warm already. So you're not like getting frozen.
I feel like I have a coat on.
Yeah.
I went in the ice and I'm like, I'm not even like cold. It's,
You know,
it's crazy.
suit of armor. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I always remember this. So I was there with my now wife Shirley, and we did the same thing. We did the whole breathwork thing, and then we went to the ice, and she did not last a second. I was like, "What happened?" She goes, "Oh, I fell asleep during the breathwork."
Oh yeah.
So we had a control study.
You had a control study. Exactly. Yeah.
And I love that because I would tell. So now it tells me like, hey, there's no doubt that that breath worked.
Yeah.
For my tolerance in the cold, and I come out, I feel amazing after that.
Yeah, I
Such
mean,
a
like
wake
it's
up.
layers on layers on layers, and like she fell asleep, and you were in the experience, but also in the experience with 20 other people.
There
and then
is
you go
something,
outside with 20 other people who just did the same breath work, and they're all getting in, and you're getting in, and there's that community like connection that takes place. And if she was sleeping the whole time, she kind of like missed out on that.
Yeah,
she's like, "What's going on? I don't know."
Yeah, she's
so
like,
you got that connection that fueled you through the process.
Right. I feel like everyone breathing at the same time, being led. There's something to it. I don't know what it is, but there's something to like the rhythm of everyone breathing.
Yeah.
At the same time, just hearing that, or just there's something that just feels like my breath is being carried by everyone else. You know, it almost feels like it's easier to breathe because it's like, you know how birds fly together.
Yeah.
And when we breathe together, it's like it feels like it's easier.
Absolutely.
It's strange
And I'm excited because we're doing a workshop here at PhysioX, and that's what I'll lead verbally to get people into a rhythm of breath, and then I'll drop my verbal instructions and just quiet myself and just watch the room breathe together. And I'll just be hands off, and everyone just continues to be on the same page. So I'm not instructing at all, and the room is instructing and working.
It's like you are the maestro, and then after that, everyone just understand their assignment and they just go.
And it's funny too, because sometimes I'll like go hands off, and one person will kind of like increase their like depth, because they'll take the lead, and all of a sudden they're leading a room through their own breath, and the room will respond, and they might start to breathe faster, and the room starts to breathe faster. And like, okay, everyone, now slow down, and I jump back in. So it's great because you can you get the ball rolling, but breath is an involuntary movement, right? It's an involuntary action. I'm not thinking about breathing as I'm talking with you, and I'm breathing as I'm talking with you. It's the only mechanism in the physical and human body that is voluntary and involuntary. We're constantly breathing involuntarily, and then we can say, okay, deep breath in, slow, deep, controlled, let it go. And that's the magic of breath.
Love it. So I know now what you're doing. You're back in Arkansas. You're doing some breath work. You're doing some breath work for some high-level executives. You work with athletes as well.
Yep.
Touch on that a little bit. Like how, like what is the benefit of executives and high-functioning people and athletes? Like how do they benefit from breath work?
Well, the parallel between athletes and executives, as I see it, is they're high-level humans. They're constantly thinking. They're problem-solving. So they're constantly in their brain working together, working on problems. And so there's this innate curiosity about how to optimize the mind-body position. And so knowing what I know about breathing and how much you can control your system, navigate stress with those high levels of achievement and positions comes a lot of stress and a lot of responsibility. Stress is constantly happening in the world. It's either happening to us or happening for us. We can either work with the stress coming at us or we can be overwhelmed. A lot of people get overwhelmed. But it's as simple as using certain techniques to recognize that there are things you can control in life and things you can't control. So what do you control? you can control your breath. You can always control your breath. No matter how much chaos and stress is coming into your field, into your system, you can always slow it down, you can always shift, you can always adjust your posture, you can always reorient and stay connected and benefit yourself by taking advantage of something, taking that toggle switch of sympathetic stimulation and slowing it down. And so I find that athletes and executives really like and they take to it because they're seeking things to continue to improve upon and find that next little edge in their life, whether it's on the field or in the workplace or at home. And so currently really leaning into supporting those individuals, and at the same time, for me, part of my journey and mission is to impact those impacting others. And so it's a great way for me to work with someone on a one-on-one or in a group basis. I do a lot of corporate health stuff. I'm doing a breathwork session next week with 40 high-level individuals in my Northwest Arkansas area, and they're stressed and working and going, and so I'm giving them this moment of relaxation, and that's part of my mission, and so it really aligns great.
Yeah, I mean that I'm drawn to it because people think Jay, you don't really get stressed, you always seem so chill. It's yeah, man, because I do, bro. I get a lot of stress, and when I do, I always go back to my body. I run, I work out, but what is running? Right? Running is just me putting my breath up, and sometimes I don't have time to run, so I go into a breathwork practice to help me calm down. Or sometimes when I go into a speaking engagement, my nerves will start going crazy, and I need to find a way to just be collected again.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For athletes too, especially in a high sporting event where they need to perform, they need to make sure that their nerves are in a good place where they can do that. And one thing I remember, we did so Justin and I, we did a live virtual session before, and we led through a bunch of our clients through the breath work. And one thing that really stood out to me is that you talked about gear breathing, and that was super impactful. So for those who don't, I'm sure you might go into it over this weekend, but what you said that really stood out to me was that, hey, if you're in a state in which you're hyperventilating and everything is going crazy, it's very hard to go and have slow breaths. And you created this gear breathing technique, which is like a bridge. It's like, well, don't go from really high to really low. Go high, go straight to that point.
Yep.
And then you go.
Yeah.
So you almost
slow it down.
Took an elevator to come down, which I thought was really impactful. And I have given that to a lot of my clients who deals with, I guess they have a tough time regulating their nerves in high stress situations, and they've used it and they loved it.
Yeah.
And it has been super impactful for them to be able to get from this super high sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
So
that's
I love that.
Credit to Brian McKenzie, one of my breath mentors, who developed the gear system, and again, it's a way to first gear of the car, slow breathing, gentle. Fifth gear, you're on the highway and you're like, and also speaking of involuntary stress comes into your life and you can't handle it, your body gets wound up, and your mind says, calm down. Social media says, relax your breath. It's hard to relax your breath when your body's tense. So what do? Relax your breath. It won't work. Your body's gonna reject that invitation. You're tense, work with that tension. Come on, get into it. Move your body, not just breathing with your lungs, but breathing with your arms and your hands. Now slow it down. It's like you're taking the key, unlocking the invitation to slow everything down. So I love that you were impacted by the gear system, and I call that the reverse gear system, going from high, reversing back down low. And that's one of so many little tools that are positive in breath.
Yeah, what I realized is that the breathing there's a lot to it. Even though we do it all the time, it's not simple.
Yeah.
I think everyone thinks, I'm just gonna breathe. It's no, it's way more than that. And I think what I love is just bringing these unique experiences to the community at PhysioX, because these things have been so impactful for me, my clients, and I just think everyone should know. Because everyone is stressed. Everyone can use more tools to help them regulate themselves. So just to wrap it up, what can people expect to get out of the class this weekend?
Yeah. I always say education empowers, empowerment, or not that. I say like education empowers the exercises. It's like information is invaluable. So the felt experience of the weekend is going to be great because you're going to get that buzzing, you're going to get excited, you're going to be with community, you're going to be in the ice bath, and you're going to have this high rise of dopamine. Everything's going to be great. But what's going to last with you for weeks and weeks and months and years even are some of the little lessons, like the gear system, those useful tools that you can bring into your daily basis. So it's almost like I'm tricking people into being in a lecture because we're doing breathing, we're doing this cool experience, but really like my like MO is coming to a room and just loading up with information. I know like even if only 10% of that's absorbed, that 10% that's absorbed is going to be lifelong and lasting in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think the gear breathing was maybe only 1%, and it had already been impactful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, hey, we're all super excited to have you around.
Thank you, man.
We're doing 2 whole sessions, 8:30 and 11 o'clock this Saturday.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. You're going to be here leading through the breath work, and then Rachel will be here leading through the ice bath. And I think people are going to leave here, and they're just going to buzz, and they're just going to feel absolutely amazing. And best coffee without coffee that I ever had.
Yeah, I call it the breath espresso. So we'll be doing some breath.
There you
espresso.
go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Nice having you.
Good stuff.